Joining me is Tuesday regular Matt Canavan, the Nationals MP and former Resources Minister. Matt, good to see you. A March election seems very much indeed on the Prime Minister's mind.
Well, it couldn't come soon enough, Andrew. I just think bring it on. People, I think, are feeling a lack of leadership in this country. The Prime Minister doesn't seem to have any answers for the shocking decline in our living standards. We have suffered, Australians have suffered, the biggest drop in living standards in the developed world since COVID, since this government came to power. And yet, this last week or so, the government's focus has been banning YouTube for kids. I think we deserve better leadership in this country to tackle the major issues we face. We've had a collective meltdown over the last week about Donald Trump potentially imposing a 10% tariff on Australians, when we now pay energy prices 3 times the amount that the US pays for. What about that energy tariff? I mean, that's a much bigger impost on the Australian economy than anything Trump will do through trade policy. Yet there's no effort here from this government to revise their clearly failing energy policy settings that have led to higher power prices despite their promises that they would cut power bills by $275. There is just a total lack of leadership in this country. There's no plan, there's no ideas about how to make people's lives better. People are struggling right now and they deserve a government that actually has a plan to control government spending, to control our migration intake and allow Australians to have a home, and to invest in energy sources that work and will keep our manufacturing industries here in Australia.
I think the energy policy is a huge issue. Perhaps a bit down on the list, but still, yet another boat of illegal immigrants has reached Australia. We only got told today, landed on Croker Island off the Northern Territory, leaving 4 people to wander the shore until they were spotted, grabbed and whisked out of the country again, I presume flown to Nauru. Again, Peter Dutton jumped in.
This is now the 23rd boat arrival, and it's another one that's been undetected. Our borders are not secure under the Albanese government. How can a boat make it to the mainland without any detection whatsoever? I think it's clear that the Prime Minister should have been honest with the Australian people today when he addressed the media. He should have provided advice. Instead, he got up and mentioned nothing about it, which I think goes to show that the Prime Minister is not being honest in relation to this debate, and it demonstrates the fact that the government is seen as weak, not just by Australians, but by people smugglers as well.
Canavan, this problem, I'm not going to beat it up. It's nowhere near as out of control as it was under the Rudd and Gillard governments. 23 boats in, 2.5 years. But still, I do wonder how on earth it managed to get another one to the coast without anyone noticing.
Yeah, that's right. That does raise questions. We're probably not going to get those questions answered by the Prime Minister because he never tackles these issues. It's not the first time he's pleaded ignorance about our nation's security. You'd think he should be across these details and be able to explain them to the Australian people. As you say, this is not an armada of boats as we saw in the Rudd days. But then again, why would you risk your life on a leaky boat across the Pacific Islands when you can just apply for a hairdressing course here and get in through the legal door? This government has allowed our student visa program to be totally abused, and we've taken in 500,000 people in net terms over the past 2 years, each year adding up to 1 million people, and that is the principal reason why we are seeing tent cities pop up all around our major capitals. I never thought we'd see this in our country, where people, Australians, some of them have jobs, they're just otherwise good, hard-working people, are having to live out of a tent because there simply is not enough homes for Australians because this government has not managed the reopening of our borders post-COVID and they're still not got on top of it. So I'm not surprised there's not as many people trying to come by boat. It's a lot easier just to come in through the front door than the back door at the moment under the Albanese government.
Well, maybe that's part of it. But Matt Canavan, just quickly before I go, running out of time, but I've got to ask you about this. Donald Trump's win, right? He says he wants to end the climate scam. That's what he calls it. Now going to take America out of the Paris Agreement to cut emissions. I asked, your opposition's resources spokesman last night if we should now leave too. She seemed sympathetic, but didn't dare say yes, which was a disappointment. Should we also quit the Paris Agreement when the world's top 3 emitters won't be bound by it to cut emissions? That's more than half the world's emitters. By volume.
Yeah, that's right.
And why doesn't the coalition leadership say so?
Well, look, I can't speak for others. I can only speak for myself. I think this agreement has not been working for our country for a long time, and we should put the interests of Australians first. Even before Donald Trump's election, our obsessive commitment to net zero has only left us with higher power prices and the deindustrialisation of our country. I mean, keep in mind the US last year produced more oil than any country in any year ever. And as I said earlier, they have power prices that are a third of us in our country. We're losing jobs to the US. Donald Trump's going to supercharge that. So the Paris Agreement, the net zero policy was counterproductive before Donald Trump's election, and now it is completely and utterly baseless. Why would we stay in this agreement when China, India, Indonesia are ignoring it? Now the United States as well. It makes absolutely no sense. It is going to do nothing for the environment if we met our net zero targets, which is unlikely anyway. It's just going to cost Australian people more in their power prices, and it's going to continue the deindustrialisation of our nation. We need to do the exact opposite. Use our energy resources, get power prices down, and reindustrialise our nation so we can defend ourselves.
We've already lost the nickel industry under this government, thanks in part to the high power prices, and it's just going to continue. Matt Canavan, thank you so much indeed for your time.